Well, we're live, Dr. Kritsky. I'm just.
Oh, thank you. I just sent you the link to the PowerPoint.
All right.
It was a rather large file. It's a rather large file, but
let's let it download. And meanwhile, I'm going to get started here. Welcome to People's University live stream. Here we go. We had some technical problems, but I'm going to run the PowerPoint, so just give me a second to download it. Before I do that, I'll just make a couple of announcements. One is that you can win the cicada art that Bob Villamagna has created. Here's the link. 1 second. By going to the library and taking your picture with the giant cicada that you see there, easy to find, and posting it online with the hashtag BroodPU. And I'll show you what the art looks like toward the end of the broadcast tonight when we're in the question and answer section. So let me see. I think I have the PowerPoint now. Hope so. It's still downloading. And while that's occurring, let me introduce our guest for this evening. We're lucky to have with us the cicada guy, arguably. Dr. Gene Kritsky is Dean of Behavioral and Natural Sciences and a biology professor at Mount St. Joseph University in Cincinnati, Ohio. He received his PhD in entomology from the University of Illinois. He is the editor of American Entomologist and has authored or edited 10 books and over 250 papers on subjects as diverse as entomology, Egyptology, dinosaur biology, and insect mythology. He is the author of this book, The Periodical Cicadas, let me get it in the light, which you can win tonight simply, there it is, by asking a question. We're going to give away 2 copies of this and one of our t-shirts, Brood PU, that I'm wearing. You ask a question, we'll put your name in the hat, and we'll draw a couple of winners. Let me go back now and see if I have the download. I do not. Let me try it again.
it is a big file. I put movies in there. I had a number of things, but
there it goes. Bear with us, please. Cicadas were gone for 17 years. We can make it here through this.
That's right.
Right. There we go. Let me open this up.
And thank you, Sean, for running the slides for me.
All right. It's opening. It is a big file, but we got it. All right. Now, I'm going to share my screen.
Excellent. You got the sidebar there going as well. So if you wanted to just run the whole show, you can, or have the slides on the side. That's not a problem.
I am going to go away. I'm going to run it as a slideshow.
Okay.
And
I'll prompt you for the change.
Just let me know. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Gene Kritsky.
Well, thank you all for being here this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. It's all one of these new technology things. Of course, they say never work with animals and computers. And what are we doing? We're talking about animals with computers. And so these things happen. But what I want to do tonight is set the stage for what's going to happen to you over the next several weeks as you go through the People's University. And that is to set the stage tonight for what's insects' place in nature, coupled with what are cicadas' place in nature. And then next week, we will follow up with details about periodical cicadas in brood 10. So let's start right off the bat in dealing with what we're going to be focusing on. Taxonomy is the study of classification. And of course, the system that we're currently still using is founded by Linnaeus in 1758. And the process of binomial nomenclature, which means that every species right now has 2 names, has a generic name, or a genus is the plural, and a specific name. So, for example, Homo sapiens L stands for Homo sapiens Linnaeus because we were the first species he described. A species that I described after my mentor, Frank Young, was Polypinus youngi. And of course, since nobody knows who the pardon me, my expression, nobody knows who I am. So therefore, they have to spell out my name. So it's Polypinus youngi. Next slide, please, Sean. And so that's the way we do classification. However, in today's world, we want our classifications to reflect more than just a categorization. That's like putting the numbers on a book and putting them on a shelf. We group books of similar subjects together on the shelf. We want to group species that have similar evolutionary relationships on our shelf as well. And as an illustration, we have a genus and species, which we just talked about. Similar genera are placed into families. Similar families are placed into orders, orders into classes, similar classes into phyla into kingdoms. And we've got one step beyond that, the domain level, dealing with, we're talking about the cell structure. And so with that in place, we're looking here at the tiger swallowtail, a honeybee, a giraffe, and a zebra. And if the next slide, please, Sean. If you were to look at their classification, as Darwin pointed out, and even Linnaeus noticed this, there is a natural branching pattern that followed. And for Darwin, this suggested the evolutionary relationships that we see in life. And so that's what we want our classifications to reflect now, is this evolutionary history. That becomes the hypothesis that we test using molecular means or morphometric means or fossil records and so on. So next slide, please. So that's the tools which we're going to be using. I want to focus on the group, the phyla to which insects belong. That's the phylum Arthropoda, and it is an enormous phylum. And within that phylum, it's broken up into a whole series of categories, of which insects are the largest category. You look at that, about 3.4% are crustaceans. That includes things like lobsters and shrimps and crabs. Spiders, about 5.2%. Beetles, 36.2%. As you can see, flies, butterflies, moths and bees and wasps all are between 12 and 10%, and then everything else, all the bed bugs, all the cicadas, all the grasshoppers, all the dragonflies, everything else falls into like 8.6% of this. So it's the insects are the largest of all these groups, and within those we're going to try to find out where cicadas fit. Next slide, please, Sean. So this is a little technical, but I don't mean it to be, but it's to get it was attributed to Confucius that the first steps towards wisdom is calling things by the correct names. And so we're going to talk about the major classification of arthropods. There are several out there. This is the one that right now seems to have a lot of the interest of various zoologists. And we can take the phylum Arthropoda and break it up into a series of subphyla. And those subphyla include the subphylum Trilobita, which is an extinct phylum, the subphylum Chelicerata, subphylum Crustacea, and the subphylum Atelocerata. And we're going to go through each one of these steps to give you a sense about what's the kind of diversity we're seeing in the Arthropoda, and then really zero in on what insects are. Next slide, please. We have the trilobites, and I'll tell you, I love these things. These are fossils found right at the beginning of the Cambrian period, 540 million years ago, and they're called trilobite because you can see there's a central axis in the middle, a middle lobe, and a lobe on each side. So there's 3 lobes, and these are this generic. In fact, at the first beginning of the Cambrian, almost 70% of all animal fossils were trilobites. Once we discovered the Burgess Shale, however, that number went away. But this is the oldest and very generic arthropod, and right now is the leading candidate to be close to, if not the ancestor to everything else that we've got. We have nothing else that fits as well as being in the right time frame, the trilobites. I moved to Cincinnati because of trilobites. I collected fossils in North Dakota and Montana as a kid, but I lusted after trilobites. Now that I'm out here in Ohio, I can find trilobites all the time if I want. Next slide, please. So that's our subphylum, Trilobita, very generic. The Chelicerata are arthropods in which the first pair of appendages are modified into chelicera, and they can be fangs, they can be all sorts of structures, so as we'll talk about. And so the most generic one we've talked about is indeed what you see there in the upper left-hand corner of the inset, and that's the Xiphosurin, or a horseshoe crab. The horseshoe crabs are a fascinating group of organisms. Next slide, please. You probably see them along the coast of the Atlantic. They are, if you look superficially at them, you see three lobes. On the one at the top, you'll see that middle lobe in the center, and then on each side, what you see is the carapace. If you flip them over, you see the legs underneath that are separate from that. That's what trilobites are about. Like that structure you see, those were the actual walking appendages. They were underneath that covering that I showed you in that fossil. Can we go back one, please? After the Xiphoceran, one of the interesting things is that if you look at a larval Xiphoceran, it looks like a little mini trilobite. It's really kind of cute. The pycnogonids are the next class, and these are the sea spiders. And sea spiders are these things that you'll see that in figure 2, but just below the horseshoe crab on the slide. Let's go ahead 2 slides, please. These pycnogonids are these really long, spindly-legged things. They have a reduced number of body segments. They got very long legs. They're so small that the digestive and reproductive organs extend into the legs. They're all marine, and they are of special interest to NASA because it's felt that these things live in depauperate environments that don't have a lot of nutrients present and a robust source of food, and that if we were going to find life on alien planets like Mars, where there doesn't seem to be a lot of obvious food sources, we would try to find things like this. And so NASA for a while has been considering looking, how would you detect a pycnogonid, for example, if you were trying to determine alien life. And you may have just seen just recently some of the work on some of the moons of Jupiter may actually imply that there are some possible life forms on some of these moons of Jupiter and or Saturn. Next slide, please, Sean. The scorpions. This is within the class Arachnida, which includes 4 orders. The scorpions, the order of spiders, the order of daddy longlegs, and the orders of mites. And this is a typical scorpion. The arachnid form has more segments fused in the head and thorax region. So you can see right behind those little pincers as a long section of the fused cephalothorax that you see there. The remaining segments that you see either in these things arachnids either form an abdomen or it's either more or less fused. In some cases, in this case, you can see that the abdomen is partially modified into that stinger that you see present here. That's the order Scorpionida. Next slide, please. We have the spiders, and these are the Arania. Spiders are quite a fascinating group of animals in particular. They have a cephalothorax. The head and the thorax are fused. The abdomen is separate, as you can see here. You have in the upper left-hand corner is the black widow, and the lower right-hand corner is the brown recluse. And then you got some examples of extreme diversity. Leucoses in the far left, and some of the saltisses in the upper right. So it can be quite colorful. And these are an amazing group of animals that they're just really cool. A lot of people there was an interesting survey done a few years ago that found that 1 out of every 5 entomologists is afraid of a spider. Go figure that. But they're just quite diverse. But they're not insects, except if you wanted to get a PhD, let's say studying spiders, you'd either get a degree in zoology or you could get a degree in entomology, even though they're not true insects, depending on where you wanted to do your research. Next slide, Sean. We also have within the class Arachnida, the group of ticks and mites, the Acari. And here we have things like the deer tick, the wood tick. And at the very bottom, I threw that in to just really sort of freak you out a little bit. That's a Demodex mite. That is a small arthropod that lives in the pores around your eyebrows. And it's something your mother gave you when you were being nuzzled as an infant. It causes us no harm whatsoever, but we have them living on our faces in the pores of our skins. Something to really sort of startle you. It's amazing what lives on and in us. These are the mites that live on us. As you know, there was a study done a few years ago looking at the number of bacterial species living in our belly buttons. And they found an average of 1,100 species living in our navels. One microbiologist said, it's like the rainforest in your navel. There's so many bacterial species there. There are 600 species living in the crook of your elbow. It's just amazing what lives on and in us. And so at night when you're sleeping, if you fear you're not alone, you aren't. Your whole ecosystem of organisms living on you and in you. So it's really quite amazing. But these are the other arthropods that we see within the Chelicerata. Next slide, please. Let's go to the subphylum Crustacea. And this is the subphylum. Next slide, please. That includes a number of organisms that you may appreciate. Prawns or shrimp, for example. If you eat shrimp, you're eating crustacean. We've got crayfish. If you like crawfish etouffee, if you like crab or lobster, these are indeed crustacean. There are several groups. The Brachiopoda, the ostracods, for example, are all other examples of other crustaceans. But this is a large group. And some of the fundamentals look like arthropods evolved to live life in the oceans. Others gave rise to life on land. Those that survived to exist in the oceans gave rise to the crustaceans and all the species that entails. And those arthropods that went onto land gave rise in part to the insects, as well as some other arthropods as well. But those are the two main groups, and they're divided by their ecological association. Next slide, please. One of the terrestrial crustaceans that we have are the isopods. And here in Ohio, where I'm located right now, we have about a dozen, 10 species now of these terrestrial isopods. And they're sometimes referred to as roly-poly, but you'll find these in your flower beds around the foundation of your house. You're going to find them in moist soil. They can roll up into tight little balls or be wandering around. But that's an example of a terrestrial crustacean that we have here in the U.S. Next slide, please. Besides the Crustacea, we've got the subphylum Atelocerata, and here's where it's really interesting. A lot of people tend to think that insects are all the animals with just 6 legs, but there are other classes of arthropods that have 6 legs that aren't insects. And so if we go to the next slide, please. This includes things such as, well, let's go to the myriapods first, I see here. This is, the myriapods have a head-trunk association where you've got a head and then a whole series of repeated segments that follow it. Similar and closely related to the myriapod that we see here are things like the centipedes. Next slide. And here are some of the centipedes that we see in the region around here. And they all have this sort of head and then a trunk body plan, if you will. And then there's a minor group, the Symphyla. The Symphyla. And next slide, please. And the Symphyla is a microscopic form. I've collected many of these. They're about 2 to 4 millimeters in length. They've got a head and a trunk. But many people in the past thought these might be this close to an ancestor of the arthropods that we have. We don't consider that this as likely anymore, but they illustrate a fundamental body plan that could link the insect with the myriapod group, which includes things such as the millipedes and the centipedes and the Symphyla. Next slide. So within the hexapods, and that's the myriapoda that we see here at the bottom, diplopods are the millipedes, hylopods are the centipedes. I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the pauropods. We'll go on from that. And the Symphyla is the last group. And they're all illustrated here in the slide to your left. Next slide. Within the subphylum Pancrustacea, this is an alternative view that we're looking at. And that's the idea that the crustacea and the insects share a common ancestor, which you got the subphylum Pancrustacea, which includes the crustacea. And then within there, we have an epiclass called Hexapoda, which includes all these arthropods that have 6 legs and a head. And not all hexapods are insects, but all insects are hexapods, which is a thing to note. There are 3 classes of arthropods that aren't true insects, and then we have true insects. And of course, all this deals with where are cicadas, where are they in the role of nature? And so what I'm trying to get is to convey to you where do shrimp where do shrimp and crabs and lobsters fit within relation to cicadas and so on? They're all arthropods, but they're distantly related. Next slide, please. The Protura is our first group of arthropods that are hexapods, but not true insects. They're blind, minute. They've got no antennae, and they basically, their forelegs stick out in front of them so they can sense the environment with that. But there are indeed six-legged arthropods, very minute for microscopic. Next slide, please. We have the columbella, and these may be some of the most common arthropods you're going to find. They're found in flower beds. You can find them in potted plants. These are things that are sort of hot. They look like they are literally jumping around. They call it common name or springtails, and they're extremely common here in the U.S. They've got if you touch them, you can actually scrape off some of the seed that they have. And that's what that pattern that you see on the backs of these things. But the columbella are a fascinating group. They've got a jumping structure, which is capable of causing them to actually be propelled up to 50 body lengths and so on. It's quite an interesting group of arthropods, but also not an insect. Next slide, please. The last group that's not an insect are the Diptera, and these are really kind of either about 3-4 millimeters in length, and they've got those two long filaments out of the end. They're called cerci. Some are just long leg-like structures you see here. Others are modified into a forceps. The Diptera are elongated forms. You find them in caves and soils and under roots and whatever. All the ones I've ever collected, I've collected in leaf litter. So that gets us now all the arthropods out of the way except for the true Class Insecta. Next slide, please. And the Class Insecta is the largest group of organisms out there. I'm not going to go through every one of these tonight, but just to give you a sense about what's kind of diversity we're seeing and where cicadas fit into this. We can divide these things up into primitive wingless insects, primitive winged insects, insects that can fold their wings, insects that can fold their wings and have a complete metamorphosis, and then insects that can fold their wings and have an incomplete metamorphosis. That's not necessarily given an evolutionary order, but it helps us understand where cicadas fit. So let's start out with, next slide, please. The Archaeognatha. These are the bristletails. You may even find these in your house every once in a while. These things feed on things like dried wallpaper paste and the glue that binds books together. These are the bristletails. They are primitively wingless. We find members of the Archaeognatha are close relatives of the Archaeognatha back in the fossil record of the Permian. They are clearly insects. They have, as you can see from the one on the upper left, they've got a hump back. They've got elongated mouth parts and long antennae, and the two cerci, the smaller structures of the abdomen, and then the long telson, if you will, out of the very tip of the abdomen. Now, what makes a true insect? Why are these insects and other things aren't? Insects have internally inside their head a complete tentorium, which is a bridge work of where muscles are attached. But it's interesting. In the evolution of the insects, the first 6 segments of that millipede and centipede or Subphylum-like ancestor evolved together to form the insect head and their mouth parts. The next 3 segments form the thorax, which is where you find the wings and the legs, and the remaining 11-12 segments make up the abdomen. And from that's what makes insects so successful. It's these segments of repeated units are like an evolutionary tinker toy system, which allowed evolution to evolve this wonderful group that is malleable and can adapt to all sorts of situations. And so from this primitively wingless form that we see the Archaeognathan, we will then from here go on into some of the most advanced insects that have ever evolved. So Archaeognatha, bristletails. Next, please. The Thyssenoptera is a second order of primitively wingless insects, but unlike the Archaeognathans or the bristletails, they don't have that hump, but they are, as you can see, they have 6 legs. They have good antennae. All 3 of the structures off the tip of the abdomen are the same length. These are called silverfish. They are often commonly found in the home. In many cases, you might find them in the bathtub. I often find them that they run through your pipes are not filled solid with water. The water is usually along the very bottom. And these things can run along the top of the pipe, and they'll run up into your bathtub, and they're insects. They just don't know how to get back down. So it's a neat group to find. but these are often found in homes. Next slide, please. Our next stage is the primitively winged insects. And these are insects like there's two groups, the order of Hemiptera, which are mayflies, and the order Odonata, which are the dragonflies. And they have wings with a rich series of cross veins, you can see here on the mayfly on the right hand side. And they cannot fold their wings, meaning they can't take their wing and fold it up and tuck it under something or over their back. These wings are sticking out, so they can't really easily run under surfaces or in between rocks and what have you. Mayflies, as the name implies, they've got aquatic immatures, and they have these very primitive wing systems that we're seeing here. Next slide, please. The order Odonata are the dragonflies and damselflies, and I'm sure you've all seen these. They're broken up into two parts. The order Zygoptera are the damselflies, these very delicately winged dragonfly things. They're beautiful animals. And again, they're primitively wingless. As you can see on the lower left, the wings cannot fold up. They're actually held, the thorax is evolved in such a way that when the wings are at rest, they're flat over the back. But if you look at the one on the right, you'll see the wings are held straight out from the thorax. And that is not an easy insect to crawl under things to get away from predators. Next slide, please. Dragonflies, by the same token, the order Odonata, they're in the Hymenoptera. They have these large membranous membranous wings with multiple veins, cross veins. You see here in this illustration. These are ancient insects. They go back way before the time of the dinosaurs in the fossil record. And so they're Paleopterous, paleo for like paleontology, meaning own, Paleopterous, opterous for winged. They're ancient winged forms. Next slide. The next major step in the evolution of insects was the ability to fold the wings. That's the tuck the wings over each other to make the insect narrower and smaller so they can crawl into spaces. And the most primitive of these is the order Plecoptera or stoneflies. These have aquatic immatures, just like the dragonflies and the damselflies and the mayflies. But in this case, these guys can actually fold their wings over their back. Stoneflies are very popular with fly fisher people who like to make their own flies for fishing. They're quite they're quite an elaborate group of organisms. What I find most unique about them are the winter stoneflies, and these are adult insects that come out in the dead of winter. I've been out in 23 below zero temperature where the creeks have literally frozen over, except for a little rivulet, maybe 4 inches wide, and going through there, you'll find living stoneflies. Really quite fascinating. Next slide, please. The Polyneioptera. Now, what the next step, poly means many folding winged insects. This is a whole group of organisms that have chewing mouth parts, and they have, if they're winged, they can fold their wings over their back. So they're new winged, not ancient wings. That's what the Neoptera means. And there's a whole group of things which I'm sure you're familiar with. One is the order Phasmida. Those are the walking sticks. And the walking sticks we have here in North America look like little sticks. If you go to South America and Africa, you'll find these things are also modified to look like leaves and what have you. A very interesting group, the order Phasmida. Next order, please. Next slide. The Orthoptera is a large group that has some economic importance. These include things like the grasshoppers and the crickets and katydids. They have jumping hind legs and chewing mouth parts. And some of them, as you see, like in the upper right-hand corner, are cryptically colored to blend in with the with vegetation. Indeed, as the summer progresses, you're going to hear the typical call of the katydid making calls in the canopy of trees. Next slide, please. Blattaria is the order of cockroaches. Cockroaches are a very ancient group. We have cockroaches way back in the Carboniferous, except those cockroaches were about the size of our hands, 5 to 6 inches in length, and they had long ovipositors that have since been lost. The Blattaria are sometimes linked together into a large order called Diptera, which includes our next slide, please. Things like termites, which are essentially cockroaches have gone social. Termites is probably one of the most economically important pests that we have in the insect world. We spend considerably more money every year on protecting our homes from termite damage than we do repairing our homes from tornadoes and hurricanes. Next slide, please. This is what you'll oftentimes see if with our common subterranean termite. They need to live in the soil, but they connect fiberboard or wood by creating these little mud tunnels, and those little lines you see all through that between those the drywall studs there are basically little tunnels made of mud that have been sort of brought up by the termites to keep them in contact with the soil. Next slide, please. And here's a video I took of a home in western Cincinnati, and there's one of those little tunnels. I scraped away in the middle, and it'll zoom in on this in a second, but you'll actually be able to see the termites walking through this. This was probably the most incredible infestations I've ever seen. Let's see if we can zoom in here. Here we go, and you can see the termites just literally walking through that from one section to the next. It's sort of a fun thing to say. Yes, you can still treat this home. In this home, I was just at this facility. It's now a nature center, and it is termite free. So it's possible to treat these and save the structure. But that illustrates the kind of infestation you can have of these termites. Termites and cockroaches share a lot of features together. And generally speaking, termites are considered cockroaches that have gone social. Next slide, please. Also included in the same group, the order Diptera, is also the order Mantodia, or the praying mantises. And the praying mantises, also called rear horses, praying nuns are another example of their common name, are voracious predators. And again, the three things that link these together, cockroaches and termites and mantids, share a number of fundamental features, which in the past has linked them together into a single order, the order Diptera. But they've also been separated into three orders: the order Blattaria for roaches, the order Isoptera for termites, and the order Mantodia for the praying mantids. I'm going to stop here for a second and say, are you getting a feel for the kind of diversity we see in the insect world? It is just incredibly diverse, and we haven't gotten near the cicadas yet. That to sort of figure out where the cicadas fit in all this, you need to realize where they are and what they are. Next slide, please. So the order Dermaptera, this is one of my favorites. These things have these like tweezers off their abdomen, modified cirrus. These are called the earwigs, and they have wonderful roundish wings that are actually held underneath these very short elytra. And I don't think I can get my cursor in here. I don't know if you see this or not, but there's elytra that I'm and the wings are just sticking out towards the end here. These are the earwigs. Next slide, please. And so that takes us through the major orders of the Polyneioptera. There are several others I didn't touch on that have been discovered in recent years. Now let's get into the holometabolous insects. Now there's another group in between to which the cicadas belong, which is an evolutionary side branch. But we're going to go to the holometabolous insects first and talk about these insects with a complete metamorphosis. The complete metamorphosis means that the larvae don't look necessarily like the adult, and they have a pupal stage, a quiescent, in some cases a stage where they undergo completely internal reorganization that lets them that occurs before they become the adult. 85% of all insects have this kind of development. All the insects we've talked about so far up to this point don't have this kind of development, and a lot of diversity there, but not with regard to the total numbers of species. These are the megalopterans, or the Dobson flies. Look at these things. Those large mandibles are sexually dimorphic compared to the females. These are wonderful aquatic insects that I've collected many times in the streams here in Southern Ohio. Next slide, please. So closely related to and sometimes placed in the same order is the order Neuroptera. And these are things like the lace wings. There's the brown lace wings, the green lace wings. There's a very important agricultural beneficial insect. And then the mantispids. And you're looking at a mantispid, or commonly called mantid fly. I think there's another. Next slide, please. Yes, you can see on this slide here in the upper right-hand corner, it looks like a praying mantis with big raptorial forelegs, but they're not at all closely related to the praying mantis. That this superficial resemblance is a convergent evolution. These insects have a complete metamorphosis, which is quite fascinating. In addition to these, we've got things like antlions. Next slide. And these antlions create are things you might, if you go out into a cave area or you have a barn that's got a large overhang and you look at the ground, you'll see these little conical pits. And these insects, the larvae of these insects, walk in circles, throwing over their backs bits of sand to create these pits. And if an ant walks into these pits, it's so steep on the side, the ant slides down. At the very base of these conical pits, you find the antlion larvae ready to grab the ant and pull it under and suck all the ant juices out of it. Next slide, please. This should be a video showing, you see in the middle there, an antlion larvae trying to get away from my disrupting him, her. As they tend to walk backwards as they throw the stuff over their heads. But you can see some of the pits there associated with the antlion. Fascinating group of animals. They got these round sickle-shaped mandibles that they puncture into their prey, and they've got grooves that sucks all the juices out of their prey. Next slide, please. The biggest of all these, the monster of all these orders, with well over 400,000 species, probably even more than that by now, is the order Coleoptera. These are the beetles. There are more species of beetles than anything else in the insect world, and there are diagnostic features. There's a forewing modified into an elytron, which is like a hard covering that covers their membranous wings and the flight wings underneath. Incredibly diverse. What you're seeing just this slide alone include things like ground beetles at the top, history beetles in the middle. We've got hydrophila beetles, and at the very bottom, we've got things like fireflies and lysid beetles and soldier beetles, just to name three. A very, very diverse group, and just fascinating. And there are people that just go nuts about it. Haldane, a great geneticist, was asked if he'd learned anything about the deity from his study of nature, and he responded, "A great fondness for beetles." And one of the great beetle workers that we have, Coleopterus, in the country is Art Evans, who will be one of your speakers coming up. So he'll tell you more about beetles, but this is a very fascinating order. Next slide, please, Sean. The Hymenoptera are the bees, wasps, and ants. And this is another large group, over 100,000 species of these insects. They include things like ichneumoniid wasps that you see in the upper middle, ants in the upper right, and then various types of wasps. On the far left in the middle row is a vespid wasp. The next two next to it are sphecids. A honeybee is down in the lower left, and the honeybee has a hind leg with a little groove in it where it can pack pollen, and so on. Next slide, please. We see divided into two groups. The previous slide showed the Symphyta, and those are wasps that do not have a constriction between the abdomen and the thorax, and the Apocreta do. And so things like you see the ichneumoniid wasp on the slide on the left, that stings a caterpillar and drags it back to its nest. The honeybee in the middle there with its pollen basket just filled with pollen to take back to the hive. Next one, please. And honeybees, very important economic group of animals. You've heard that cliche. It's been thrown into doubt a little bit, but we have that cliche that 1 out of every 3 bites of food you take require a bee. It may require some pollinator, but it's probably a generalization. Can you all see the queen bee in this slide? Can you find the queen bee? She's at the upper right-hand side towards 1 o'clock. You'll see that that insect with the longer abdomen is indeed our honeybee. Next slide, please. So we're almost done with our survey before we get to where the cicadas fit. The order Mecoptera, I bring this up because it's one of my favorites. These are the scorpion flies. And scorpion flies had a much richer diversity back in the Permian than they have now. They're called scorpion flies because the male genitalia is held up over the back like the tail of a scorpion that we saw a little bit earlier. Very interesting group of predators. They're getting a lot of discussion right now because it turns out they are closely related to the next slide, fleas. In fact, the order Siphonaptera or fleas, in many texts, you're going to start seeing this being revised. Fleas are now considered scorpion flies. We've got good morphological evidence and good DNA evidence, and now a good phylogenetic analysis suggests that indeed fleas evolved from a scorpion fly ancestor, and so for that reason, fleas are probably going in the next few years, if not already, going to be moved into the order Mecoptera. Fleas are these things that you find in your dogs and your cats. They're laterally flattened, and if you ever chase after a flea in your pet, they run between the hairs like no get out. But they are quite an amazing animal. And if you should go into entomology even further and go into detail, you'll see some scorpion flies, for example, that wingless scorpion flies that look like fleas, but they're not they're not laterally flattened. They're rounder. But if you look at them on the side, they look very superficially like fleas. Next slide, please. We've got just a couple more groups to go before we get to the cicadas, and that's the order Diptera. These are the flies and mosquitoes, and they include a number of fascinating groups. You'll see there's the mosquito on the bottom there. We also have crane flies, things that look like mosquitoes that aren't. Like those are our midges, if you will, our chironomids. These are defined by the term Diptera, di meaning two-winged forms. They include such major things such as our houseflies, our mosquitoes, our horse flies, deer flies, and so on. Next slide, please. The last two orders I want to talk about before we get into the group to which the cicadas belong are the order Tricoptera and the order Lepidoptera. Excuse me. The Tricoptera are a fascinating group of aquatic insects. They've got aquatic immatures and terrestrial adults, and the terrestrial adults used to be called water moths over a century ago because they look all superficially like moths, except they're hairy rather than scaly. And what's really kind of cool is their larvae form. Their larvae, as you see in the bottom slide here, the bottom photograph, will glue around their outside a little test, if you will, a little case, which or cadus is what it's called. That is, in this case, is made up of small stones glued together, and they live in streams and capture food products that go past them in the streams. A fascinating group of organisms. All the aquatic insects that we've been talking about, things like dragonflies and damselflies and stoneflies and now caddis flies, those are all very important biodiversity indicators. If you go out to a stream somewhere and you collect all these aquatic insects, you can look up what's the tolerance, the maximum and least tolerance levels of dissolved oxygen and phosphates and nitrates and what have you. And you can find that zone that overlaps with all the species that you have. And that tells you a lot of information about the water quality. So a nice application of what kind of things you can see with the diversity. Next slide, please. Our order Lepidoptera are the butterflies and moths. 112, 120,000, somewhere about 110 to 120,000 species of these. Only about 13 species of butterflies. The rest are moths. And you're familiar with these things such as monarchs and sulfurs and swallowtails and what have you. A very important group, closely related to the Tricoptera, but a very important group. We have a number of economic pests within the order Lepidoptera. It's not that the moth is the pest as much as the larvae is the pest. Things like corn earworms and things like that. But the order Lepidoptera. Next slide, please. Now let's get into the group within which we find the cicadas. And that includes, there are three orders in the Perineoptera. Para meaning side, Neoptera, para. It's a side branch from the Polyneioptera. Has just three orders: the Sokodia, the bark lice, true lice are in this group. The order Thyssenoptera, which are the thrips, and the order Hemiptera, the order to which we find cicadas. And next slide, please. The Cicoptera are things like bark lice and book lice. The slide in the middle, the picture in the middle, is that of a beautiful little bark louse. They've got a unique shape to the head. They hold their wing tent-shaped. They've got a wing venation that's quite diagnostic. And when you see these things, there's no mistaking of what they are. I often find these in things like Berlese leaf litter samples. The picture on the far left is a book louse. And if you go to a library and you pick up a book, let's say it hasn't been looked at in years, you might sometimes open it up and you'll notice a little dot of dust that seems to be moving on the pages. And that's a book louse. They're not a louse that's going to infest us with any kind of concern, but they're lice that you find in the pages between books. And so it's an important, not an important group, but it shows some of the diversity. Within the order Sokodia, which include the bark lice, we also find our true lice. Next slide, please. Which includes things like the Melophaga, the chewing lice, and the and a pleura, the sucking lice. And some of these things, like the body louse and the crab louse you see on the in the color picture on the side, are important ectoparasites on humans. And they used to be in their own order, but that now has been essentially subsumed within the Sokodia. But this is where we find things like our true lice. Next slide, please. The Thyssenoptera are the thrips. These are fascinating little insects that have fringed wings. They've got wings. You can see the slide in the upper right is sort of flat over the back, but if they stretch out, they've got little fringes on it, like Davy Crockett fringes, if you will, on a leather jacket. They're missing one of their mandibles. They have asymmetrical head capsule in that case. Some of these are very important pests of things like onions and other crops like that. There's also very important greenhouse pests in the order of Thyssenoptera. Next slide, please. And now to the group to which we find our cicadas. All that diversity that we've seen so far, it's going to set the stage for all the lectures you're going to have this fall. Next week, we'll talk about periodical cicadas. But then after that, you're going to get into beetles. You're going to get into wasps. You're going to get into all sorts of things. This will lay the groundwork what's going to happen. Within the group, the last order we're talking about is the order Hemiptera. And that includes three groups. The suborders Heteroptera, which include things like we see in the slide here. It includes things like the giant water bugs. It includes lace bugs, stink bugs, which you may have seen in your homes in the fall of the year when the brown marmorating stink bug comes in. And hopefully you've never seen bed bugs, which are secondarily wingless insects. These all have piercing, sucking mouth parts, which they can use to feed on plant matter or in turn feed on humans as well. Next slide, please. Here's four examples of some of the members of the order Hemiptera. The term hemi means half, ptera, wing, half wing. And if you look at the one on the far left here, you'll see that the very distal end or the very bottom of this thing is membranous, and the base of the wing is leathery. And the same is true with the one second from left. You have that red leathery base, the black with the white dot, that's membranous. If you look at the one on the far right, the brown is the leathery wing, and the black towards the tip of the thing is membranous. The one in the middle of the second from the right is a unique-headed bug. It's a true bug. I did my PhD thesis work on this animal, and it does not have a true Hemiptera, but it is a primitive Hemiptera. It's the most primitive known of these groups. It's all membranous wings. This includes a number of economic pests. The Tritomini, which spreads Chagas disease, for example, among the group, and of course I already mentioned the bed bugs. So that's the suborder Heteroptera. Next slide, please. We've got two other suborders to talk about. One is the suborder Alcanorhyncha and the suborder Sternorhyncha. The suborder Alcanorhyncha includes the group to which cicadas belong. The figure 1431 that you see here is a cicada. They have large compound eyes, piercing second mouth parts, totally membranous wings, and they include a variety of species. And I'll talk about them in a few minutes. But closely related to them are the tree hoppers, which you see in the middle there on the figure 1432. I said it's a leaf hopper, the leaf hopper in figure 1432, and the tree hopper on the middle right. The suborder Sternorhyncha includes things like aphids and whiteflies and the scales. So cicadas as a group are more closely related to aphids than they are to bed bugs, but they're all within the same order. And so that's quite an amazing process we see there. Next slide, please. And so we're looking here at some of the characteristics of aphids are the ones that you see in the yellow. The scale insect looks like a little scab on that apple that they're looking at, and underneath there's a series of you'll find the immature form living under that scale, and then the white flies look like little miniature flies with white wings, and that's figure 1434, but also what you see in the bottom middle photograph there, and they're in the Sternorhyncha. So within that group, what links them all together are piercing, sucking mouth parts, and within that group, you've got to include the cicadas, that's within the Alcanorhyncha. Next slide, please. And the Alcanorhyncha the cicadas. You see the very far right image is one of the South American alcynarincans. We have a leafhopper at the top. You've got a lanternfly in the middle, and the lanternfly is going to be a relative of the cicadas you're going to hear a lot about in the months to come. It's the new major pest that we have coming into the U.S. It was first noted a few years back in eastern Pennsylvania. It's now made its way across Pennsylvania. It is on the Ohio border. You're likely to be seeing this soon in West Virginia as well. And it's of major concern for our agricultural systems here in the U.S. So it's the next pest that we're going to be sensitive to. But these are all members of the alcynarincans. It's, again, piercing sucking mouthparts, quite easily identified with the oral shape. Next slide, please. And this is our family. Within that alcynarynx, we got the family Cicadidae, the family of cicadas. And this here, as you know, we have brood 10 of the periodical cicadas emerging. And right now, I was pleased to say that just before this program started, I was out on my back deck listening to a massive chorus of brood 10 here at the house. But periodical cicadas that would come out once every 17 years, at least with the 17-year forms. There's also 13-year cicadas. Aren't the only cicadas we have. There are around 3,400 species worldwide. Here in the United States, and I'll take Ohio as an example, we have 20 species of cicadas in the family Cicadidae in Ohio, 6 species of periodical cicadas, and 14 species and subspecies of annual cicadas. And the annual cicadas, which you see on the left, are green, black, and brown. They have green eyes, some have black eyes. They're bigger than the periodical cicadas, which are the 3 that you see on the right. They come out usually in early July and hang around until early October. Very different life history strategy. They come out in very small numbers. They are cryptically colored, camouflaged in the trees. You might hear them singing and calling, but it's hard to find them. On the other hand, the periodical cicadas, which you see on the far right of the screen, red eyes, black bodies, orange colored veins in their wings. They come out in May and last until the end of June, and they come out in massive numbers to overwhelm predators, giving the predators all the food they can possibly consume, and then there's still millions left. Next slide, please. And within the periodical cicadas, there are 2 life cycles. The brood 10 cicada, which is coming out this year, is a 17-year periodical cicada. And you can see there are 2 sizes. We have 1 large species and 2 smaller species, and they're easily separated by turning them over and looking at the underside, where you can see the color pattern. The Magicicada septendecim on the bottom left has broad orange bands. Magicicada cassini in the middle is all black on the underside, and Magicicada septendecula, very narrow bands on the abdominal segments. But we'll get into the periodical cicadas next week. So when we think about where are cicadas in nature, they are members of the phylum Arthropoda. The arthropods include everything from trilobites to horseshoe crabs to spiders to scorpions to mites and ticks. Within that group, they also belong. Also in the arthropods, we have things like millipedes and centipedes and symphylans. We've also got a whole series of closely related arthropods with 6 legs, like colembala, springtails, and Protura and Dipleura. And then we've got the insects. And the insects are even bigger than all the others combined. And we've got the large order, the order of beetles, the Coleoptera, the large order of Hymenoptera, the bees, wasps, and ants, the large order of Diptera, the flies and mosquitoes, and the order of Lepidoptera of butterflies and moths. Those four orders have over 800,000 species in those orders. Among the minor orders is the order Hemiptera, which includes the family Cicadidae, the family to which the cicadas belong. And so within that diversity, this minor order and this family Cicadidae, which has only 7 species, has been taking our focus of interest. That'll take us into next week's lecture. So thank you very much for your attention. Sean, I think I can entertain any questions people might have.
Okay. Let's do that. Well, there's my question. One of them.
Why are their songs so loud? Yes, we'll get into that next week as well. But it's one of the interesting things about cicadas. The annual cicadas, when they sing, they're vulnerable to predators because predators can hear them, which is one of the reasons why they need to be hidden per se. But the periodical cicadas, those the songs are they're gathering in trees called chorusing centers. The males are competing with other males to get the attention of a female. So having a loud call is going to be beneficial in attracting the attention of a female. Once she gets the attention, she can't sing, she can't respond, but she responds by flicking her wings. And that wing flick, if the male sees it, he turns and faces her, and then he'll sing again. She'll flick her wings. He'll sing again, flicks her wings, and it goes through a series of mating calls. I'll go into more detail on that next week. But that's what keeps the periodical cicadas at least coming back once every 17 years.
Okay, I'm going to put this up on the screen. It's very long, and it's from a young man named Miles, who's 7 years old, and he has several questions. So,
excellent, Miles.
Let's take a look.
Are centipedes venomous? Centipedes have cyanide glands, which is how they used to sort of paralyze their prey, if you will. They can cause quite a bite if you're not careful. Millipedes, on the other hand, are herbivorous, and other than some of them having repugnant glands and producing smells that are rather off-putting, they aren't as dangerous. What's more of the question there, Sean?
Yeah, let me put it back up.
I thought I saw a tarantula hawk wasp in my garden, but I don't have any tarantulas to eat. Not being a hymenopterist, I can't speak to the spider wasps in your state. There are several spider wasps in your state. What type of spider does it eat? I have seen spider wasp, pompilids, go after things like the wolf spiders. This is amazing. You'll see these rather large spiders you'll find out in the ground. I've seen them paralyzed, and these wasps dragging them across my slab of my back a pavement below my deck, and then stuffing them into a little mud structure, laying an egg on it, and then sealing it up to provision that with that paralyzed spider. And so that's quite a fascinating thing to see. More to the question.
Let's put it up again and see what else we have.
Why do mosquitoes bite some people more than others? Well, I know you're talking about those instances where there are people who literally you could be out there in a backyard, and for whatever reason, all the mosquitoes are congregating on one individual versus the other. There is $1 billion product out there for someone who can figure out what's going on. There are hundreds of volatile compounds produced in our sweat, and if we can figure out what we could modify or how we can modify that to make our sweat repulsive to mosquitoes, that'd be a big advance for humankind. There are some mosquitoes that like to bite around the ankles, and some that bite higher on the body. I take students to Egypt on tours, and there is a mosquito that loves to bite around ankles, and we call it the a pox almost, because at the end of that first evening that we've been in Cairo, their ankles just bit up like crazy from these spiders that are biting along there. And there are some not spiders that are biting, the mosquitoes. There are some mosquitoes that really go after foot odor, others that do not, others that are attracted to increased CO2. They can detect the warm body temperatures and so on. So there's a much more complex process involved with what makes a mosquito attractive to some people versus others.
Wow. I
know what you're talking about because my father-in-law, it's like when you go outside, it's like the mosquitoes know he's there. They're going to put an apple in his mouth and carry him away that he's going to be dinner, because they just go after him like crazy, but the rest of us are barely being bothered. So we always invite him to outdoor parties.
My grandmother always said, because you're sweet, that's why they bite you.
That's a complimentary way of saying it. There's, other than just, you drew the short end of that straw.
Just to finish Miles' questions.
Sure.
We already answered. He asked about why the cicadas are so loud, but he wants to know why they have red eyes.
Well, the better to see you with. There is a visual component to cicada mating. Not only do they sing to attract a mate, the male turns, and if he sees the female and she sees him, that can further enhance the mating process.
And here's a question from Jerry. Why are they called brood 10?
Well, this is Jerry back in 1893. Well, before 1893, there were three different systems involved with naming cicadas. Two involving brood numbers, one involving emergence years. The two involving brood numbers did not use the same. In other words, brood one was not the same for each of the two broods, and it was extremely confusing. And then you added a third system that was based not on brood numbers at all, but what year they came out. And you're thinking back, and you're always subtracting from 17, 17 from whatever was the number you had to figure out which brood that would be. And so in 1893, a man by the name of Charles Marlett, who worked for the United States Department of Agriculture, said, let's make some sense out of all this. For every cicada that comes out in 1893, that's a 17-year cicada, we're going to call that brood one. Every cicada that comes out in 1884, that's 17 years, brood two. And numbers 1 through 17 are reserved for 17-year cicadas. The 10th one in that sequence came out in 1902. That's brood 10. And that's the brood you can say brood 10, 1902 to 1919, 1936, 1953, 1970, 1987, 2004, 2021. That's the next one in the sequence that we have. And so we also have 13-year cicadas. And so Marla said, if you're a 13-year cicada and you come out in 1893, you're brood 18, and 18 through 30 reserved for 13-year cicadas. When we did that, and then we looked back and we converted all the numbers to fit that system, all sorts of things fell into place. All of a sudden, the maps made sense. And you could see patterns in the maps. In next week's program, I'll show you the maps of all the broods to give you a sense about how they sort of fleshed out in that process. Our goal this evening was to let you know what arthropods were and where the insects fit in the arthropods and where the cicadas fit in those arthropods. And if it was an awful lot to go through, and I apologize if it was overwhelming, but you're smart people. You're going to a program like this. And one of the sheer joys of working with insects is the sheer diversity of what's out there. You can look, there's 8,000 species of birds. We've got 1 million species of insects, in the world. So there's something really fun about this. And I was very impressed when I was asked to talk about the place of insects and the cicadas and their place in nature, because that's not often what you're asked. It's to give you a total appreciation. And for those of you who haven't thought about a career like Miles, you're a young man. I have a cliche, and that is entomologists are biologists with a job. I love being outside. I love being out there working with bugs. I love helping people. I love helping people live more safe and better lives. And that's what you do as entomologists. Yeah. And there's a whole range of applications from medical entomology to helping stop spread disease to understanding insect products. Insects. So insects make honey. They make beeswax that's used in the pharmaceutical industry. It makes lac, which is used to preserve woods, and so on. So it's just an unlimited area of study that's just not boring at all.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk a lot more about cicadas next week, so I'll save my questions specifically about them for then. I have a lot, including some of the things that humans do. But let's go to this question, because a lot of people maybe have moral issues. So here's this.
The weird and brutal question, but what bugs are okay to kill? I am typically a catch and release in my house for anything but flies and those huge spider crickets that breed in my basement. Well, those spider crickets that you're talking about are probably Folsted spiders, the sort of really long-legged things, and you don't need to feel bad if you end up killing them. I do. I slap mosquitoes and they land on me. We're part of we're all part of this food chain here, and sometimes it's eat or be eaten in that sense. But I tend to protect certain insects. For example, within the spiders, the saltissas, the jumping spiders, they are so personable. They're hairy. They got these great big eyes. They got 6 others along with them, but they got these 2 big ones that make them seem so personable. I can't bring myself to kill those, so I catch them and release them. Cicadas, I can't kill. I do take voucher specimens for the museum of the periodical cicadas, but boy, I can't eat them anymore, and I just love them too much. They've been too good to me in my career, so that's important. But
Yeah,
there are other. I'm sorry.
That's one of the things that always comes up when they come out.
Oh
Recipes
yes,
for cicadas.
I've been everything from Jimmy Kimmel last week, and
Right.
when they showed my picture on his show, I said I was ready to eat them. I have never said in any review or in any interview this entire spring that I still eat cicadas, but yet I
Okay,
do have
let's go.
recipes that people have used. I've had them several ways, but sometimes you just got to try it for yourself. But and the other thing is that brood 10 is threatened in some parts of its distribution, and so I'm trying to get a good sense of where it's at. Miles says jumping spiders are your favorite. Miles, I don't blame you. They're pretty darn cool, aren't they?
They're cool, yeah.
There's no way around it. They are just fantastic.
Here's a very topical and regional question, I think. Maybe it's not, but you will tell us.
What are stink bugs? Why are they swarming us in biblical proportion? What's the best way to deter them? CJ, I think you're probably talking about the brown marmorated stink bug that a few years ago was even more plentiful than it is now. These insects were inadvertently introduced into North America, and they've spread like wildfire. And in the winter months, they find a hibernacula where they like to overwinter as adults, and they will cluster. And in Asia, they tend to find nooks and crannies on southwest facing rock faces, and the closest thing we have to that here are south facing walls of our houses. And so they'll gather around the houses, and if they can detect where heat is. And if there is an opening into your attic somewhere, they will get in there, and they'll start to overwinter there. As you turn your heat on, and that heat gets hotter in the attic ones, they'll start moving around. And again, they'll go where the heat is, and they'll get into the house. And most people are not thrilled to have stink bugs in the house. So that's part of the biology that's going on. So if you want to stop them from getting into the house, do a careful inspection of where openings that insects can get in. If you have vents in your attic so that water doesn't condense in your attic, get a screen over them so that the screen stops the bugs from being able to get access to your attic. Things like that. Look at areas where some of the bricks and some of the seams around windows may have gaps that you can fill in. That's a good thing to do. But what do these brown stink bugs eat? They are plant feeders, and they actually go after a number of things. But what's rather important, I think, it turns out katydids love their eggs. And here in Ohio, we have found in recent years that the stink bug populations have leveled off and are now dropping as more and more katydids are feeding on the stink bug eggs. So just give it time. And as I said in Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
Right. And the earth will survive our folly.
There you go.
That was also from Jurassic Park. But here's a question from our friend Gene. And this is something that comes up a lot. We've all heard this.
I've heard it said that if and when the Earth is destroyed in a nuclear disaster, cockroaches will be the last survivor. Is this true? If so, why? Well, that comes from some of the experiments that were done out in the far west during the testing of nuclear weapons. And they put things like turtles and cockroaches and all sorts of animals in cages out there and let them be exposed to radiation. And the roaches did a pretty good job surviving. So yes, they probably could. Again, now if they were hit at the point at ground zero, they probably wouldn't. That would fry them, but they did survive some of the radiation exposure. But so did tortoises and things like that as well.
And Pam asks why they're called cockroaches.
Well, and actually, there's a long history in the etymology. The study of words is etymology. Entomology is the study of insects. They used to be called roaches. Then they became cockroaches. But the prefix cock carried a whole range of connotations. So a lot of people stopped using that. And they're also referred to as German roaches. Then the Germans call them Prussian roaches. The Russians call them German roaches. There's a whole range of names like that, and it's a rather rich vernacular to see where these names come from and what have you. But
Okay.
it just has a long history going back to like the 16th century.
Let's see. One more question, and I'm going to let you make a couple more announcements, and then we'll let you go. Let's see. Some people. Okay, here's one.
Are there any insects that have a completely aquatic life cycle? When you say completely aquatic, are you saying they live in the water at all times? No, in that because they tend to have to do one of two things. They leave to fly. Things like the giant water bugs, for example, can fly from pond to pond to pond, but they're living in the water otherwise. But they leave and fly and disperse in other ponds. So they're out of the water. They're not totally aquatic in that sense. There are very few insects that are adapted to seawater, for example. I think there's only just a handful of species that adapted to life in the ocean. The question that just came up there second was, what's the benefit of having an aquatic and terrestrial? One of the benefits between those is of course, having a terrestrial adult and an aquatic immature allows for dispersal. The adults can fly to another location, lay their eggs in another pond somewhere. That's beneficial. If you look at the most successful animals, and I talked about them briefly today, things like the butterflies and moths and the beetles and the bees, wasps, and ants, and the true flies, all have that complete metamorphosis where you have a caterpillar stage, a pupal stage, and an adult. That life cycle method is 85% of the insect world. Having adults that don't compete with the immatures is quite adaptive. And so if you've got insects that are aquatic as immatures, but are terrestrial as adult, that's a similar process. And so the adults aren't necessarily competing with the offspring for survival. And that can be beneficial.
And Jean had a follow-up to her question.
The National Museum of Art in Havana features a large cockroach. That's a very interesting observation. I've never been to Havana. I'd be curious to see that.
And so with that, and that's interesting because we chose sort of to start with cicadas, not only because of Brood 10, but it's a good metaphor for what humans have gone through. You know, we've been sort of underground for a year and a half, and we're reemerging and trying to survive. So let me just show the people, and thank you, Dr. Kritsky. That was excellent.
Oh, thank you, Sean.
And let me just show the people what they can win. First of all, I'll show you this. This is a library staff member, Nate, who raises praying mantises, and he's going to take us on a field trip when this is all over in July. But Nate is showing you what you can do if you come to the library and take a picture like this with our giant cicada and put it on the internet with hashtag BroodPU. You can then win this. And I'm going to, whoops. Bear with me for 1 second because this is the big prize. This is and I put this in picture up. There it is. Cicada art by a local artist named Bob Villamagna, who does mixed media, and this is made with metal on wood. It's about 20 inches wide and 12 inches tall, and it's pretty cool. We have it at the library, and you know Bob's work is pretty coveted. So if you do what Nate did, take your picture and post it, you'll be entered in the drawing to win this. So speaking of drawings, let's draw for tonight. First, we're going to give away a copy of Periodical Cicadas by our guest tonight, Dr. Kritsky. And I have the names here in my hand. And I'm going to draw one of them. They're all folded up, so I can't see who's what. So the first copy goes to It's very dramatic. Wish I had. Thank you. Gene Finstein. So,
Yay!
yeah, there's Gene. You get a copy of Dr. Kritsky's book. I'm going to give away one more of those right here. If I can unfold, I've folded it so tightly I can't get it open. Here we go. Come on now. Drum roll again. Okay. Jerry asked a question tonight. So if you get in touch with us, either send me an email or message me with your address. I'll have the book sent directly to your house. And now for the t-shirt, or you can have our Brood PU tote bag. Your choice. Let's give away one of those. And the winner is Elsie. That's Miles. Miles won. That's his mom, I think. Young Miles won a t-shirt or a tote bag, his choice. Get in touch with me and join us next week, same time, same place, 6:30 p.m. All about Brood 10 and the cicadas, the cicada invasion, the cicada mania. It's going to be great. And I'll ask my cicada questions that I kept in reserve tonight. Thank you, Dr. Kritsky.
Thank you.
And yes, my colleague had many questions. So we're going to save them for next week. And we're all looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone who attended. We'll see you next time. Get into the library and do this. Win this. This is a great work of art. It'll be worth thousands someday. Goodbye.